Hello, virtual taste of downtown. I am Steve Lowery, the editor of the High Low, and with me is your God. No, I don't know. Maybe he is or isn't, but it's Brian Addison. Woohoo! We have been asked to speak, and mostly Brian will be doing that. And we are going to talk about this moment in time that is so kind of crucial and critical and could be long-standing, kind of the future of dining in Long Beach. And Brian, just as we're recording this today, it is Friday, and we've just found out that people are going to be able to go back into restaurants.
But at a limited capacity, at 50% capacity.
It's going to look different. So let's just talk about today. What are restaurants going to look like in the next week or two? What are we going to be seeing around town?
Well, it actually depends. First off, a lot of restaurants won't be reopening. I don't mean to begin on a downer in that sense, but the vast majority of restaurants I've talked to won't reopen either because they don't want to put their employees at risk and they feel it's too soon. And then some, it's just simple logistical reasons. If you don't have something like a patio, it's very difficult to run your restaurant at a limited capacity. So likely the places that will be opening are those with patios or, as we announced this morning, those working with the city's Open Streets initiative, where they can expand into parking lots, let's say, to do a temporary parklet. They can expand on the sidewalks. They can expand into parking lots and roads. So what they're going to be seeing is unlikely dining directly inside the restaurant and more al fresco options.
So people are actually it's going to be outside. Is there any place right now that you could point to say, this place is already a good example of what we're going to be moving towards outside?
If anyone's ever been to a parklet at Lola's or Hamburger Mary's or Berlin Bistro, expect more spaces like that, but spread out. Tables will be 6 feet apart. Communal dining, which was really popular about 5 years ago, is going to be out the window. And then new spaces that people will be able to experience. I mean, I know for sure confirmed right now, you have the Lowery in Bixby Knolls. That's typically where First Fridays is held at. That will be closed off. So EJ Malloy's and Dutch's Brew House can use that for additional seating. Blair Cohn of the Bixby Knolls Business Improvement Association told me that other businesses along Long Beach Boulevard and Atlantic Avenue in Bixby Knolls will be using sidewalk dining and parking lots and extra space. So Bixby Knolls is definitely one of the places you can probably go to very soon and see instantaneous changes.
Is Bixby, are they at a bit of advantage, Brian? Because I always go there for First Fridays with Asia Morris of the High Low, and we actually always set up in the Lowery, which is a cool place. It's a gallery and an alley, and it's really cool. They have art. It's great. When you mentioned they were going to do that, I'm like, that's like the perfect place. But Bixby Knolls in general, that commercial area there seems they're especially used to using the public space there. They would almost be a step ahead of everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, Bixby Knolls is just kind of a prime area to implement these temporary spaces in the first place. I mean, Bixby Knolls was the first place to ever have a beach streets. So they were the first place to ever really shut down really long lengths of road to public real estate and pedestrians. So they have that in their back pocket. And then on top of that, it's business owners want it. I think Mayor Garcia had a really poignant point when he said, this is only as effective as the neighborhood that wants it. So obviously, Public Works isn't going to be going into a neighborhood and shutting down a street that doesn't want it. But Bixby Knolls really wants it. I was just talking to Bjorn, the owner of Rasselbach and the soon to be open Wood and Salt. And he was like, I think most business owners really want traffic calming elements along Atlantic and Long Beach Boulevard because people use it as a highway. And Bixby Knolls is kind of a really cute, intimate, walkable neighborhood. And I think these kind of temporary pop-ups might actually even set some more permanent features in the future.
One place that you have kind of advocated for going for something, I don't know if you want to call it radical, is actually shutting down 4th Street, basically Retro Road from, Cherry to
Wanapero.
So basically where all the great vintage shops are, where the art theater is. What do you think is the want or desire to do that? Have you talked to anybody about that sounds like a great idea or ain't never going to happen?
Well, it's kind of somewhere in the middle. I mean, I really broke it down logistically. That it's about 850 feet of roadway between Cherry and Juan Apparel on 4th Street. During the day, it's very light vehicular traffic. Most of it peaks after 5 p.m. And I admit that that would be one of the more trickier parts because you want it to remain open after 5 p.m. because you have the Socialists and Lola's and Number Nine and Tarantella and all these restaurants that are going to want nighttime activity. So you might be battling it out with people who are coming home from work and needing a very precious parking space.
Yeah.
But I do believe in the least we would be able to do some type of thing that would allow a temporary closure daily or even just on the weekends,
Yeah.
that would allow these spaces to open up. I know the neighborhood, as far as parking goes, wouldn't be too thrilled, but just the vast amount of foot traffic that it would bring, I know would be a business boon.
Well, we've talked about this. Steve Gerhardt of Walk Long Beach talks about this all the time, that if someone's in their car, they're zipping by places and they're probably going A to B when you're walking or on a bike, but especially if you're walking, you're more likely to stop and say, oh, look at that place. That looks cool. And actually go in.
100%. Like the myth that people only go to places in their car is only a myth because they're going to places they already know for a
Mhm.
fact. So it's a planned trip. But for the more serendipitous happenstance where you really discover what's in your neighborhood, by foot or by bike is 10 times more viable for businesses to see and accept new patrons than the car isn't. And there's data to back that up.
Now, I would imagine the place that we could see the most rapid kind of conversion into this new type of dining is right where I'm sitting. The post office, the Long Beach Post office is right on the promenade down here downtown. And that's been shut off to traffic for years now. This is where we could really see the very first kind of inkling of what all this is going to look like and how it's going to operate, right?
Yeah, I mean, the promenade is one of the more just like blunt, frank examples of creating spaces that are more pedestrian centric than car centric. I think people would find it crazy right now if we were to reopen the promenade to vehicular traffic. You're even starting to get that sense with the promenade above Third. Every Friday they already shut it down for a farmers market, but it seems the more and more that the promenade north of Third seems to grow, the more people that are coming. And it seems like business owners are very much like, you know what, maybe we want this more like the promenade below Third, where permanent K rails are put up and it's blocked off to vehicular traffic all the time. But for right now, I mean, the area between Broadway and Third on the promenade is prime for letting businesses and public areas expand, to go beyond the uses that they currently have.
Those K rails are those big concrete jobbers. You see them put
But yeah,
down.
and there's
We're going to be seeing
yeah,
a lot of these.
there's
Yeah.
there's multiple types of K rails. Like the ones on the promenade are those steel beams that you see popping out.
Okay.
And basically K is its rating. That is basically it can withstand an impact of a car. So there's ratings of rails, and a K rail is the industry standard for anything involving cars.
Hmm. I know this is coming out of a horrible crisis, but this has the possibility for kind of remaking the city in maybe a way that might end up being, hey, this is pretty great. Like we like it this way.
Yeah, there's huge opportunities and potentials about all of this. I mean, I know that Public Works and the city has been very insistent that the Open Streets Initiative is temporary, and they want to emphasize that eventually these spaces are going to go away. But the power of public opinion is going to be there, and if these are spaces that people eventually become attached to, and want to be a permanent fixture of their neighborhood, they'll have the power to do that. They'll be able to fight for that, and I think the city would accommodate. So I think we're going to see a shift in what people prefer the use of their space in their neighborhoods for.
Okay, so as we sit here today, again, we have this variance that people needed, that restaurants needed. They can be open. Your best guess this weekend, and maybe even next weekend, Are we going to see wholesale openings? Are we going to see people rushing out? Or is this going to be very incremental, Brian? Very slow to kind of get up?
I personally believe incremental, but it's funny. I will admit this. Sometimes the social space I interact in is a silo in and of itself. It's a lot of my readers who believe in what I write about, have supported some of my commentaries. So maybe I myself am in this bubble of just hearing, you know what, I'm not ready for this. That's what I've heard largely. Like when I first posted Kelly Puente's piece about Long Beach sending in this fast track application, I shared it in our food scene group. It's over 10,000 members now, and that's a pretty decent chunk of people. And the unquestionable majority opinion, 9 out of 10 was, I'm not going to be going to a restaurant anytime soon.
Yeah.
So there is a social anxiety, and even restaurant owners, expressed a deep hesitancy, and not just because, I think Chef Arthur Gonzalez, who runs Hideaway in Ponza, really said it best. He's like, "And as a business owner, of course I want to open up.
Yeah.
As a human, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Just as a person who has to take care of employees and their patrons, there's a hesitancy there, and it's rightful. There's no question, it's rightful."
Before we mention that, if let's just say every restaurant in Long Beach magically opened tomorrow, Brian, and they sprayed some aerosol and we're all better. Everything's fine. It's all gone away. I'm curious, which is the restaurant, eatery, but whatever that Brian Addison in his head has been thinking, you know what? When I finally go to a place, this is the first place I go.
It's between two.
Okay.
It would either be Amatoli. Um, full admission, I love Chef Dima. She's just a spirit and an entity that, like, her food is part of her. And when you eat in her restaurant, she's right there with you. And there's just something I miss about that human connection. Pure food terms, oh God, there's nothing more than I want than like a medium rare ribeye from the Hideaway. The Hideaway was the last place, the second to last. I wrote about Lupe's actually, but second to last full formal review I did. And it harkens to this like mid-century modern steakhouse that, my parents and my grandparents would be like, this is the high-end place. Like, this is the best place. And it's just, I think there's something about that aura that, I love. But in all honesty, it's funny. This question was asked in the food scene, and I had such a hard time even whittling it down just a few places. Like, for me, when I'm able to, I'm going to be doing a food crawl. Like, it's not going to be a single space that I go to. I'll be, going to a place, probably drinking too much, go to another place, probably drink too much, give someone a hug. I miss hugs. Hug these
Yeah.
people. And yeah, like, just kind of do a food crawl is what I would.
It's interesting about what you mentioned about food because I think the thing I've been talking to people that we miss most is being able to go to live music shows, concerts, and things like that. And we were saying that this has really made it apparent to me that you really don't go to a concert to see the band. You go to the concert to be with everyone with the band, that there's this back and forth. You all agree we like this band, they mean something to us, because you can listen to the band on Spotify, you can watch them online perform. It's that thing. Food is the same way. You can get takeout and all that stuff. Really, what you miss, like for me, I think the first place I'd want to go to is Cafe Piccolo, which has always been a very special place that I've been going to since the early 80s. It has always been a place, if there's someone new in my life, I would take them there. I would take my mom there because I love the food and all that, but it's more about sitting on that patio. There's always such a lovely energy. They got the cheesy tuxedos, the pink.
Well, I think a lot of people are, that I had this frustration, and it was like my goal this year before all this went down. It was my goal to start writing more to educate patrons about what a restaurant really is, because for a lot of patrons, they really just think it's just the dish that's given to you. And they don't think about the person who washed that dish, the person who chopped the vegetables that were put on that dish, the server, the choices, where the distribution of that food came from. So I really wanted to educate about foodways. And what's funny, this pandemic has kind of done it for me. People are realizing, wow, they sure do get their food still, but it's in this sad little to go box, and their friends aren't around, and there's not a server randomly suggesting something to you that you never would have chosen. There's not the, kind of vibrancy and dynamism that is with humans just being around each other. And sometimes it's like, I've always said a dining experience is an introverted extroversion. You go because you want to sit and talk with the people that you're with, but you would never want to be alone in that space. It's weird. Like,
Yeah.
you wouldn't want an an empty restaurant with just you and your friends at a table. You
Right.
still want that interaction around you. And I think people are kind of really missing that, you know, social conundrum of wanting to be intimate, but wanting to be around others simultaneously.
Hey, let's say you talked about labor. That is something that is very interesting. People were very concerned. I think people have a good idea now how many people work in hospitality in Long Beach, how what a key industry it is here. But we've also heard that one of the difficulties of getting started up again is a lot of these people are making more money on unemployment than they are in the actual restaurant.
Well,
Is it going to be harder, Brian, for them to the restaurants get those workers back, or because are some of those workers going to say, you know what, maybe I wasn't being taken care of properly?
that I think that's the larger point. It's not necessarily that they're making more money, because without tips, I mean, they're not making the same money. That is for
Mm,
sure. But
yeah,
they're making enough money to live comfortably and live safely, I think is the bigger key. Um it's not it's not the restaurant industry they distrust. It's humans. And the more and more we start to allow people to have these freedoms, we're seeing, like, a lot of people aren't respecting social distancing, a lot of people aren't wearing masks. And so for a worker, especially a hospitality worker, it's physically grueling, it's emotionally draining, and it's constantly interacting with people. To be put in that position and not be properly compensated, it's a risk that I think a lot of employees are like, you know what, no, I'm cool. And
that's a
it's going
good
to be
point.
it's going to be a head hard fight for restaurateurs to say, hey, come back, if there's not some type of assured safety net.
And you know what, man, we've all had that uncomfortable dining partner who the server comes over and they treat that person like a servant. It is, oh my, I have a very good friend who will not look them in the eye. And I always say, why are you being a jerk? Come on, that's a human being. They're just working. And I could see being very concerned about that. It's one thing to be rude, it's another to be dangerous.
Well, and especially when this situation has now officially become politicized, and I don't care which side of that political line you're on. I would never want to be like that poor Costco worker who's simply following the rules of his employer and is asking someone to put on a mask and then having a phone flipped out and being put on blast on social media, or being treated for simply following the guidelines that were given to them. So
Yeah.
and servers, I mean, anyone in the hospitality understands this, and this is why they treat other bartenders or other servers with such great respect, and they over tip and they overcompensate. And it's because they've been there before and they understand how some people really truly treat them rudely and disrespectfully.
My son is a bartender up in San Francisco, and whenever he's down here, we go out. I always know to budget an extra 10% of whatever I would normally give anyway. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Whatever I'm going to give, he gives me the side. I'm like, oh, there we go, more of that. Hey, before all this happened, I think it's hard to remember back. You were already doing some amazing pieces and work on
Uh,
about the workers and healthcare. We're talking about the chefs themselves, servers, and all that. Now we're in a situation, Bry, where obviously people are coming back. It's going to be, hey man, this is all hands on deck, whatever. That job to begin with is so difficult. And frankly, from talking to you, borderline dangerous. They really do put themselves in the line of fire sometimes, you know? Um, what do you think that is going to look like in just in the next couple months as far as them protecting themselves?
It's been one of my concerns for just to allow people to know what Steve was referring to right before this went down. Literally, like we had filmed all the video. We did these very intimate one-on-one conversations with chefs and restaurateurs about the stresses of opening a restaurant and how this restaurant kind of becomes your precious little life source, and how that affects you from a mental health perspective. And the stories were really incredible. And I don't feel like that's lost. And I'm gonna pursue it probably in a different angle, because what I've been watching with these restaurateurs is resilience in a way that I mean, I'm astounded. I really am. Like, I think I mean, I'm always preaching, Long Beach, but really we are very lucky to have some of the small business owners that we've had who haven't given up, who didn't immediately close their doors, who rolled with the punches, and they're still rolling. And I don't know how they're going to maintain their sanity. I know it's love from the community. I know that sounds cheesy, but I know for a fact that every time one of you guys does a special order with a restaurant, or that restaurant sells out one day, like I know Lola sold out on Cinco de Mayo, literally sold out of food. They were Lewis and Brenda were so honored and so humbled, and it keeps them going. It's small energies like that. In this new world though, it's going to be a whole new set of stresses and concerns. It's going to be a whole new story.
Um, we were talking about when this whole thing hit. I think you wrote this too. I'm pretty sure you wrote this. There was a Long Beach food scene. There wasn't just restaurants in Long Beach. This, and I think you have a role to play here, it had developed its own environment, its own ecosystem. There was a knowable Long Beach food scene. You wondered, I think, in print, it just, this whole thing just kind of happened, and now this hits. Now that it can open up again, do you think, did it come through better than you thought? Worse than you thought? Like, is it still there? Where do you think that
Oh
food?
yeah, it's definitely still there.
Yeah.
I mean, I immediately think of Chef Ross over at Remix. I mean, you're talking about a guy who was head of the kitchen at Patina when they got their Michelin star. This is a guy whose idea of food is so far removed from delivery and to go, and he still opened his first Long Beach restaurant. Um, so I think there's definitely something there that people want to keep alive and want to hold out. Um, as long as we keep it up, it'll be fine. But I do believe there is a kind of exhaustion with delivery. I think people are getting tired, so they're making their own food a little bit more. They're budgeting more, that's for sure, especially for those who lost their jobs or are living on very, very, very fixed incomes. To go isn't definitely the always their option. So I think there's kind of this fatigue amongst patrons, that is only going to be fixed by reopening. Ironically, though, that fatigue will not override an anxiety. And if you don't have people feeling like they're safe, then they're not going to go out. It's a whole new world of traversing and treading and figuring out what works and what doesn't. It's going to be trial and error.
I don't want to be morbid, but am I wrong that, like, rock bottom went down a few weeks ago, and I think I thought at that point, okay, here we go, here go all the dominoes. I haven't really noticed. How to say this kindly? I thought more people would go out of business. Okay, I'm just
Oh
going to say
yeah.
that.
No, I'm
Are
right
you
there with you.
surprised more people haven't?
No, I'm totally surprised. Like I was talking with James Stevenson of Bobo, and for those who don't know the history of Bobo, the reason why Bobo is such a cog in the food scene, the Cone Restaurant Group based in San Diego is massive. You're there. I would say the Cone Restaurant Group was the single part of why the Gaslamp District in San Diego is what it is.
Mm.
Uh, they just totally revisioned it, and so then they decide, you know what, Long Beach is a market. I think that we can do that in. They purchased the building. It was a $5 million purchase rehab. It was an investment in food in Long Beach that hadn't been seen before. And I thought for sure, I was like, holy, crap, we're gonna see Bobo go out. But no, I talked to James Stevenson of the Cone Restaurant Group, and I was actually really thrilled to hear. Yeah, they were closed to the public, but they were giving 2 meals a day to all their employees, making sure that they were fed, and honestly, were just treading water and seeing what everyone else was doing to see if they could come up with a viable plan. So Bobo's isn't closing. The only two really big major closures were Rock Bottom, which was already having financial issues beforehand,
Okay.
and Fed Bar. And now, with some of these options coming up, maybe Fed Bar might return. Who knows?
Yeah.
We'll see.
You were saying people are getting tired of takeout. I don't think you are though. You love your takeout. Yes. Oh, maybe getting a little tired.
Well, no, I really love the experience of a restaurant. Like, and
Mhm.
it's a distinct thing. Like, if anyone ever has the chance to be invited into a busy restaurant kitchen, go.
Yeah.
It's like watching a crazy ballet of heat and food and yelling and on really just like it's strange, but it's captivating to watch. And it's food that's meant to be eaten and served in a specific time frame with a specific style and a specific aura. And I don't mean to over romanticize the idea of restaurants, but there's a reason that it's so different when you get a plate in front of you. You don't have to worry about that dish. You don't have to worry about when the conversation's going to end. If you want to get more wine, just order more wine. And it's this space. While at home right now, it's limited by what you have. Sure, you can replate it, but then when it's all done, you still have dishes. It just kind of kills the romance of food in a sense. And then, of course, there's other things about this that have made me love being at home more. I've been cooking more elaborate meals. It's going to make me appreciate family get-togethers way more. Like,
Yeah.
there is nothing. We have family in Southgate, and there's nothing more I want right now than a loud mariachi, carne asada, tamales, a nacho station, chicharrones, just like the full 9 yards of a Mexican throwdown. So I'm
Damn you,
mixed.
Matt Addison. I haven't eaten lunch yet. Yes! Oh, that sounds great.
I'm mixed. I'm mixed. Like,
Yeah.
I appreciate what restaurants are doing, but I definitely miss like a plate given to me by a chef at the time it was supposed to be given.
Right. You've pointed this out several times that I think a lot of people think, well, whatever, just throw it in there and there it goes. But there are certain meals that is just not going to work because everything at a restaurant, like you mentioned about the ballet, is timed out, right? When
Yeah.
that plate hits, this is when it is supposed to be eaten.
Even taco trucks. This isn't just relegated to a restaurant with china put in front of you. There is just a whole feeling about like panchos on Anaheim, having the trompo and the spit with the al pastor and it being freshly sliced and just given to you right there. And you sit under neon fluorescent lights, go to the salsa bar, and you're standing and you're talking, and then maybe you go to the Hawk for a drink. There's something about that whole social ballet that's poignant for me and something that I love. And it's something that I really, really deeply miss.
What have been the for you the takeout meals that you have especially loved, like things that have come to the house that you're surprised that they hold up in the delivery process and all that? What have you loved?
And they've been doing this for years because they catering, but Chef Paul and Dana Buchanan, man, at Primal Alchemy, holy shit, do they have this down to a science. Like, it's masterful. Like, really, like, we got these marinated short ribs, mashed potatoes, and heirloom carrots, and each one is given directions on how you reheat. it's all par cooked slightly so that when it comes out, it tastes like it's supposed to. But they're catering masters, and I'm wondering if chefs could learn from caterers and these people who have to hold on to their food for a lengthy period, because whenever we reopen, let's get one thing straight. I think some people have now been spoiled by delivery and they're going to hold on to that.
Right.
And I think that restaurants need to keep that in mind, that they need to have a viable delivery menu that is food that holds up well and does well, because man, the Buchanans are masters at it. It was unquestionably my best meal delivered.
You think that may be one of these things that comes out of this crisis that we may see from now on, that even very nice restaurants are going to have a to-go menu.
Yeah, and it's going to be different than their dine-in menu because it's going to be food that has to withhold, a 30-minute delivery time.
Now, when you say they'll have a to-go menu, please say that includes cocktails, because to me, this is the greatest thing.
Oh, right? I kind of wonder, it's like, why were these barricades there in the first place?
Exactly.
And I don't mean to be that skeptic. I understand, like, you want control over alcohol consumption. But I mean, you and I, we're in New Orleans.
Yes.
And that's a city with an open container law that you can walk around anywhere.
Right.
And it really wasn't this massive hot mess that like people were painting.
Right.
Bourbon Street, when it would get packed, sure. But in the whole city, Bourbon Street is this measly little stretch of maybe 4 blocks. And the rest of the city has the same law. And there's really nothing that's out of control. And there's nothing excessive. And there's not people falling on the street or stumbling or anything.
Well, I live in Hermosa Beach, and we have this area right by the pier where all these bars, and there are people falling on the street because they're filling up their belly in the bars. It's almost like they overcompensate. Yeah. If you can have like a little space. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, there are these things called liquor stores, okay? And you can go get liquor to go there. Why not allow them to do that and have a delicious, delicious cocktail? In fact, I mean,
and walk around with it.
Oh man, walk around with it. It's in a cute little, I think it's like the European thing, because Americans tend to balkanize alcohol consumption. We tend to over consume. Whereas if you're always going to have it, you're not going to panic. And just kind of, yeah.
When you don't paint it as a devil, no one's curious about it.
It's so good. It's such a lovely thing. I wanted to ask you about, yes, you had mentioned before, incredible as this sounds, within all this madness and us talking about people maybe going out of business, there are these brave souls out there who are actually opening up restaurants and eateries during the crisis. They sound like amazing people. Brian, can you spotlight a couple of these people who have actually taken this incredible step?
Yeah, well, we talked about Chef Ross. And for people who haven't had his food, he's not with Bettina anymore. His whole branding has been around the word mix, mix kitchen, mix bar. And those are all based in Orange County. And it's just incredible food. It's really, really solid food. And to be honest, I thought we had officially lost him. I mean, how else can, but he opened in end of April. And it's been a success. Like, people are getting his food. He's figuring out the delivery. The other big one will be
before you
Chef
go on,
Susie.
He's out at the Exchange, right?
Yeah. Remix.
Yeah.
Is over in Long Beach Exchange over in East Long Beach, which is so great because that's exactly the type of food that area needs. Long Beach Exchange is becoming this kind of food heaven. And then we have Chef Susie from Wild Chive. So for those who don't know Susie, it's just the coolest story. She's from Long Beach. She moved to New York to kind of work her way through the food world. She wanted that hardcore, and there's no, more hardcore city food-wise than New York if you want to work in it. And she just kind of worked her way up through these kitchens. She was living in Brooklyn. She was a vegetarian. She became a vegetarian when she was 19. And then she went vegan. And all these tricks that she learned in non-vegetarian and non-vegan kitchens, she started applying to vegan food. And she created this brand called Wild Chive, which is wildly popular and rightfully so. incredible comfort food that is labeled vegan, and it really doesn't need to. That's, I mean, it attracts it just to let vegans know, that it is what it is. But I mean, her vegan Monte Cristo is one of the best I've had,
Mm.
vegan or otherwise,
Yeah.
And so she's just a really, really brilliant chef, and she's been doing pop-ups with Wild Chive in Long Beach now for like 4 years. So she was first just doing deliveries to various coffee shops where you could get like her vegan breakfast burrito, get it reheated. Then Caston at Portfolio loved her so much, was like, hey, why don't you just do vegan brunches over the weekend? It became so popular. Caston had to be like, we need to find you a new place. It's too crazy here. Like it can't withstand this amount of people. So then she went to Made. And then after that, she started doing pop-ups at Alamitos Bay Farmers Market,
Mhm.
and just kept growing. She's been saving up, and she finally scored a brick and mortar off of Broadway, right a little bit west of Cafe Piccolo.
Right.
So right on that strip, a little bit west of Gallagher's and that whole thing too. Basically in between Wanapero and Temple.
Right.
And yeah, she's gonna open June 5th. Vegan Monte Cristo. She's doing Vietnamese coffee, which is typically made with like really dense condensed milk.
Right.
And she made her own in-house vegan condensed milk. So I'm super excited. I think it's going to be rad.
He's very famous for brunch, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Brunch is her thing. Like her vegan brunch is one of the best. It's not just because it's vegan. It's like Seabirds. It's like I tell people about Seabirds. You go and you have the food. It's labeled vegan just to appeal, but it's just good food no matter how you look at it.
Yeah,
It's
I imagine now in that industry, the vegan industry, that's got to be a discussion. Like, well, if we say vegan, that may attract vegan diners, but it may scare some people off. And if our food is good enough, and Seabirds being a perfect example, like who the hell cares? It's just delicious.
Yep. It's
Yeah.
just good.
What are you doing this weekend, buddy? Are you gonna get any good takeout? You gonna cook? What are you gonna do?
Definitely gonna cook.
Yeah.
I love cooking. I'm not sure what yet, to be honest, but
Yeah.
I think I'm actually gonna keep cool this weekend.
Nice. There's been a
I
lot
think I'm
going
gonna
on.
actually just relax.
Yeah.
But I always say that, and I always end up, doing something. But
By the way, the Long Beach food scene, your Facebook page went over 10,000 followers. Um, Food can be a very kind of hot button topic. People are passionate about it. But given what's going on, has this been kind of a time that you've noticed that people are more pulling together? Um, yeah.
oh yeah, it's funny. Actually, so there was what I've been doing. The shout out to the people on the food scene. You guys are amazing and engaging, and so respectful. One person had tried to post what kind of just amounted to a really negative Yelp review. It was just kind of, like it was complaining about a lot of periphery that I felt was unfair. And whenever I disapprove a post like that, I actually reach out to the person and tell them why I didn't approve their post.
Right.
And before I could even begin, I had like a dot, 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 and then I was going to go into my thing. That person immediately responded and they were like, I couldn't find it to delete it, Brian. I am so sorry. I think I was just like being emotional, but everything that I was talking about had nothing to do with the restaurant. And I'm so happy you deleted it. I would have been so embarrassed if it got posted. I really just want to apologize in advance. I even called the restaurant and said, hey, I'm sorry if I was super mean. So, like, there's people who are, I think, really evolving, and because they're beginning to understand, like, it's more than just the food on the plate, and even delivery, even more.
Right.
It's more than just that food that got to you, and it's now an even more complex structure too, especially when you're dealing with delivery. It's like, well, if you're dealing with a third party deliverer, it goes beyond the restaurant's control.
Right.
Like they can't control how long that person decided to drive to you, or if they decide to pick up another order, or. So it's been really cool watching people actually evolve in their kindness.
It was amazing that you were able to affect that change without an executive order. Congratulations.
Amen, brother. Amen.
All right. Hey, virtual taste of downtown. This has been a pleasure. I love talking with Brian. This is like the highlight of my day. So I know you enjoyed them. Taste away. We will, I'm sure, see you maybe next year. We'll
Yeah, hopefully next year, right? We can actually like go out to the
Oh,
tents and sample some stuff, and we'll say hi to you.
oh, it's
We'll
gonna,
bring a camera. We should bring a camera to the next one.
I'm gonna cry. That's
Do like the like awkward, just how do you like that the moment someone gets a piece of food? That'd be
Brian,
fun.
thanks for doing this.
Bye,
Thanks,
guys.
everyone. We'll see you
Have
soon.
fun.
Bye bye.